contextualizing this event in the course of every storyline we tell throughout the course of a season. That's something I try to do on this show. It's just like, if finishing top 8, because I did this rant the other day, I'm going to do it for you now. In other sports, team-centric sports in particular, you have things like the Pro Bowl. You have things like the All-Star Game. You also have year-end awards that feature things like All-First Team or All-Pro in the NFL. We have rankings in tennis, so to some point, if you want to know who is the 7th best player in a season, I suppose you can look at that. But to have an event that brings the 8 best in the world, that says, here's the best, let's figure out who's the best of those best, it's everything you should ask for in a sport like this.
I mean, I'll tell you my favorite thing about the finals, be it WTA or ATP, and it is the format. The round robin, to me, is just such a fan-friendly setup. I mean, it is, if you're a huge fan of Aryna Sabalenka or Iga Swiatek, and you want to book a ticket months in advance or even weeks in advance to see her play tennis, unless you're booking a first round, you cannot guarantee that your women's semifinal or final ticket, maybe you can, in this case, if you're Aryna Sabalenka, the way that the year that she's had, will be playing in either of those matches. But if you're booking a ticket for the WTA finals, you have 3 shots at least to see one of your favorite players. And not only do you have that opportunity, but I love qualification scenarios. It's very nerdy, but I'm in good company, I would imagine. Like the qualification scenarios of who needs to do what to make it into the semifinal, who needs to win the group, second place. I'm addicted to it. It's just so much fun. And so those are my 2, that's my favorite part of it. And it's really what sets it apart, in my opinion, from the Grand Slams, is to have everyone in one place, all competing and competing in a unique format that only features the best of the best. It's just kind of the best of everything.
That's really well said. You aren't guaranteed those matchups as much as we hope for them at a major championship, and so often we have been gifted them. Anisimova versus Swiatek, Anisimova versus Sabalenka. Hell, we finally got a Sabalenka versus Swiatek matchup, even if it was a semifinal at Roland Garros this year. But to your point, you roll the balls out, you play, and you're going to see not only a top 8 opponent in your first match, you will see them in your last match of the event as well. And certainly, I think it's even more valuable on the men's side this year, and we'll talk about that. Maybe if you're kind enough, you can come back and join me for the men's preview in a year where, okay, Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic, but who else is relevant? Who else even has a shot against those guys right now? Like, we need data points in answer to that question more than anything else. And you look at the gap those two have in terms of top 20, top 10 victories versus the rest of the field. It's just like, I need to see these guys play each other to figure out the pecking order. That's not the case as it relates to the women's event this season. However, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in contextualizing the strength of this field, I think it's been at least half a decade, maybe more, where you can say all 8 players at a tour finals, as we have this year on the women's side, are the best versions of themselves in the season in which this tour finals takes place. And we can debate whether that's true or not. Again, I guess we can get into it right now. Let's do this now, DK, as we contextualize a little.
Oh, I'm here.
Let me throw out the outline, and let's just get right into it. Because when I look at this field, at this WTA Tour Finals, again, for those that don't know, Sabalenka, Swiatek, Gauff, Anisimova, Pegula, Keys, Paolini, Rybakina, the 8 women we have. You can quibble with the Rybakina. Is this the best version of her? No, but it's getting close. And again, 6 of these 8 women, DK, competing in this year's field are competing in at least their second consecutive tour finals. Last year, Paolini in this event, you would have been like, okay, that's the gimme. You can't say that anymore in a month where she has beaten Pegula and beaten Swiatek on hard courts. That happened in the last month. We saw it with our eyes. She's beaten Gauff, I think, 3 times this year as well. Like, it's a different Jasmine Paolini with more credibility than before. You know, again, for Madison Keys, it's just her second career tour finals. And yes, it's not the Australia version of Madison Keys, but Madison Keys is always one match away from being a match away. And she gets hot, anything can happen, her ball striking. Like, if that's your weakest link, Kasatina's not walking through that door. Kudermetova's not walking through that door. First-year Pegula and Gauff aren't walking through that door. Like, if that's your weakest link, it's a different sort of weakest link. Again, you look at the 2 players who are making their first tour final. Oh, excuse me, only 1 player is making their first. So 7 women are playing in at least their second tour final. I mentioned the 6 consecutively. Keys, again, it's her second, first since 2017. Anisimova's the new person, but again, talk about someone who is at the peaks of her powers, 24 years old. She made 2 slam finals this season. beat Swiatek and Sabalenka at majors here this year. And we'll talk about this, but you look through the catalog of players we have competing, all of them have a win either over either Swiatek or Sabalenka here this season. Like, I just think there's no weak link in this field. We have our two groups. We know the 4 women who will be competing in the round robin stages, but no matter what the permutations ended up being, every match feels valuable. There's no fluff. There's no layoff. Like, the fact that Swiatek is going to face the brand of player that has been almost the only brand to give her troubles this half decade, with the overwhelming power of Anisimova, Keys, Rybakina. Like, that's her group. Sign me up for those 3 fucking data points. Like, I just think, I don't know how maybe I'm speaking to a straw man argument right now, but this event should feel like a major. And I think if you win a tour finals, we should value that accordingly, because, like, look at this year's field. How can you not feel as though the person who emerges out of this doesn't gain something of that caliber? Long rant, I apologize. Floor is yours.
I would say, I mean, of the 2020s, this is probably the strongest field. And I think we've had situations in the past where you've had like 3 locks or 4 locks. But I think if you were to break down all of the biggest titles won throughout the season, they've all been won, I imagine, by any one of those 8 players. Like, other than Mira Andreeva is probably the notable absence here, but otherwise,
I was gonna say Ostapenko, Stuttgart, like that. Those are the 2.
Okay, yeah, but like certainly like the thousands and the slams were all pretty like and the thousands are pretty like evenly divided. It seems and it feels between the top 8 players. So I think in that way, it does feel like the most momentous, Elite 8 in quite a while. I mean, I have a long memory. I go back to that 2014 field, which is over 10 years ago. I mean, it's so iconic, and there was so much seeming like star power coming out of that group. This group is still younger in that respect. Like, I think in talent and in achievements, they're really quite picking up quite equitably among the group. But I wonder if I'll feel differently after the matches, and if the matches really deliver, if that kind of makes me feel retroactively more excited. But this could just be me feeling like a bit jaded, having experienced many WTA finals before, but certainly coming in, if you were to ask me to pick the 8, this is about the 8, give or take, Amira Andreeva.
That's exactly it. And she's probably the only one you'd feel like missing. And we'll get to how she ended up missing out here in a second. But, first time 4 players from the same country in a field since 2004. In 2004, it was
Crazy.
4 different Russians. Yeah, this time, obviously, it's 4 Americans. It's the first time 4 Americans have qualified since 2003. In that year, Capriati, Serena, Venus, and Davenport qualified. Chantaruba ended up getting in as an alternate. First time 4 Americans are slated to actually participate since 2002. And again, that's Serena, Venus, Capriati, Celis. But you mentioned it.
And 2002 was a field of 16.
Yeah, and I went through all of the fields. And I'm not going to list them all and list all the names, because that will take too long. Google it. You can find them yourselves. You can push me. But you also go by the era. Like, again, early 2020s, you had Barty, but you didn't have Swiatek and Sabalenka. Then you had those 2, but they were still in their ascending stages, and you didn't have the rest of the field rounded out the way again. For Pegula, Goff, 4th consecutive tour finals. We know they belong here. For Rybakina, by the way, quietly, a 3rd consecutive tour finals. We know her best is top 8. It's just like Anisimova this year. It's unequivocal. Paolini, 2nd straight. Obviously, Swiatek, Sabalenka, etc. I went through the fields. I had 2 nominees for you. You mentioned the 2014 field. Serena, Sharapova, if not at the peaks of their powers, very close to it in terms of the gravity that the rest of the tour, they were the gravity on the tour, everyone surrounding them, and a gravitational center of the sun, that's the word. Kvitova, not injured at all yet, like just the unfiltered raw power of the lefty. Halep, maybe not quite established yet, but we throw Halep in the Goff camp or the Anisimova camp, where it's like, we know you're going to be really good for a while. Bouchard was flash in the pan, fine. Radwanska, Ivanovic, Wozniacki, established top 8 tenured players. 3 Pegulas, essentially, in the mix of that year. I also threw up the 2017 finals because you have a more established Halep. You have a Pliskova who had reached world number 1, and even though she hadn't won a major, was very good. Again, Svitolina, peaks of her powers, probably Wozniacki's at the peaks of her powers, Muguruza. That's a pretty good crew as well. But like, I think this field is up there with it, maybe even higher. Again, what do we have? 5 major champions in the group, and the rest have all made major finals. Like, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, I think even in collective achievements, it probably does even eclipse 2014. I mean, in a field that has Serena, Maria, Ivanovic, even a Bouchard is like, at this point, a minor celebrity. Like, I think that's more what I'm getting to. But I do want to. My one thing about the WTA finals that I'm really looking forward to seeing if that question gets answered is, what do we make of sort of the ninth player, if so to speak, which is the court? And that has often been a significant opponent and rival for a lot of these players. You go back to a Simona Halep. Yes, she made the final in that 2014 debut, but regularly was not pleased with the slow conditions in Singapore. I know the conditions were slow in Shenzhen. No major complaints about Guadalajara, or Fort Worth was a little slow, as I remember. And obviously there was a lot going on in Cabo, right? Cabo, like in Mexico in 2023. I want to see a bit more data points on this court in Riyadh. For some reason, the finals court has been a bit slower, and that can make for some maybe perhaps less than ideal tennis. So I'm curious to see what that is, how that mixes with this Elite Eight field. And that really might tell the story, especially, you mentioned that group that Iga Swiatek is in, all power hitters. If they're on a slow court, Iga may not be in for as much difficulty as she would be if it was a bit faster, say, even to Cincinnati, which she did win this year. I do want to make that clear. But, a fast versus slow court at the end of a long year could, spell the difference between a good and a great WTA finals.
100%. You also go back to last season, like Qin Wen just finding her rhythm in Asia and finding a zone in those conditions that few, if any, were able to match. And I'm glad you called it the ninth character, because you're absolutely right about that case. But by the way, I didn't mention those two names. It's also just worth noting, and we should value this as long as we have it, we have two unequivocal first ballot, maybe top of the pyramid level Hall of Famers at the peaks of their powers right now in Sabalenka and Swiatek, and their primes are overlapping. And we don't get to see them play in enough high stage events because for some reason this year they never wanted to overlap when exactly they were playing their best, what events those would be. This is another opportunity for that. And like on the Sabalenka front, and we'll get into her stats in a moment as we grade these seasons, she wins this event, particularly given the weight of the field. It becomes a really fun December podcast. What's the better season, 22 Swiatek or 25 Sabalenka? And this is her throwing down the gauntlet season. I do think when we look back at the Sabalenka run, and it's a special run, like we'll be like, oh, in that 2025 season, that was the one where I don't know if we've seen many players be as good as she was start to finish that season, particularly if she finishes it with a Tour Finals title run, an event she's yet to capture. Again, the murderer's row. Swiatek's going to have to maneuver just to get out of her group. It'd just be like an unequivocal stamp. Fuck that first half of the season. I am back. To have those two storylines permeating, Anisimova wins this. Is she going to be everyone's pick to win the Australian Open? Maybe. Like, there's just a lot on the line. I'm a fan of this Tour Finals. I'm a fan of this field. I'm a fan of how we got here and just your reminder of what those final 2 weeks look like. And I was curious your thoughts, DK, because I said it on the podcast the day before that the least shocking thing in the world to me was going to be Elena Rybakina announcing she had withdrawn from the semifinals last week in Tokyo, I believe it was, after she had clinched her spot in the Tour Finals, because she had to play so much tennis with so much urgency. She had a legitimate elimination match for her season, had like 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, and she beats Paolini in straights. Beats ECAT in 3 sets. The wins over Fernandez and Mboko. That sneaks her in. I mean, Paolini doesn't get points for the Billie Jean King Cup, but how she finished her season to win her way in.